sucking anymore to get into that. What time is
It was a
cheese?
fun night. But they
When I'm
couldn't hear
retired,
us.
I'm gonna be the most vulgar,
No, it wasn't
ridiculous
very
person
friendly
on
here.
What are we gonna do? Fire them?
He's supposed to get this hearing
Do it
aid
now.
today.
Well, you are.
If you not tour over there and see how they are with each other, there's no way I say
Oh, yeah.
So you still in IT?
Oh, yeah, I'll be
Of
there
course.
forever. You don't really transfer out of IT.
Sometimes when I call
All right,
you,
so
yes,
let's get started. Today we have,
You should.
I mean, I have to sign it down. Pass it around this.
I just like to
I
call
know.
them.
It's our last thing
Good,
here
good.
We have Jason Williams here to talk with us about depression. So I'm not really going to take up any more time. I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing. So let's give him our attention and ask lots of questions. And
Awesome, thank you. Welcome and happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you folks. Thanks for being here. Jason Williams, I work about a block right over there in a small group practice, associated psychotherapists. While independent providers, but we share our costs. So anyway, I like the Christmas group therapy cartoon. Frosty's bipolar, or he thinks he is. Santa's got an identity crisis, and the poor elf, it just is overworked. So I don't know if you identify with any of those folks. And then, of course, there's the quintessential therapist with his bow tie and his bald head, listening to all of this. So now, I was asked to present on depression, and what I like to do whenever I give a presentation is try to connect with people who are here. You've taken your time to come, thank you. There's hopefully something that will be useful to you in the presentation today. But if some of you are brave enough, it would be wonderful for you to say, okay, here's what I hope to get out of my time listening to you discuss this topic. Any thoughts? Doesn't have to be personally related to you. It can be your mother-in-law who you find very difficult to deal with, and you want some tips on how to deal with your depressed mother-in-law. I hope that doesn't hit home too closely to some people because you might now be offended. Any thoughts or questions or things, feedback from you all that I can keep in mind as we go through the topic today? Yes?
How about like seasonal depression?
Awesome, thank you. Yes, that is something that maybe you or someone else you know is experiencing. Look outside. Gratefully, we can see across the valley today. Okay, which they tell me is a green air day, right? Less pollutants or contaminants in the air. But seasonal affective depression, or SAD as we call it, is a definite concern this time of year, and it really is caused by lack of sunshine. That's what causes it. Okay, so great. We'll definitely address that. Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else have anything else more that we want to touch on? Yes, please.
What about assholes that are retiring?
Can't do anything about assholes who are retiring.
Barb, it is being
Anyone else you
recorded.
want to point a finger to? I mean,
That
that was a subtle finger point right next to the woman sitting next to you. Oh, I hear a rumor she's retiring from Joe Commander.
Yeah.
There is a good way to deal with that. You
Yes?
can also retire.
No, no.
Your husband said, your husband said no? Is he a bit controlling? Maybe you're pointing to the wrong a-hole. I don't know. Is he here? He's not here. I'm sorry, can't help you with there. Other than you're probably going to be pretty bummed out when she leaves.
I know, how do you deal with that? I mean, we're having a ton of people leave.
That's hard when you, no, really that's a situational kind of factor where you develop some very close colleague relationships, coworker relationships. Some of them can be dear friends, and I think that's very true. And when they leave and go on with their assholes or not, when they go on to their next phase of life, retirement, it's a real loss, and you might miss them. So we'll talk about that. That's a situational factor that can certainly bring on, so at least, moments of discouragement or sadness, like, oh, work's not going to be quite the same without that person. So great thoughts. Anything else that we want to touch on? Yes.
I'll just kind of add to that.
Okay.
Because Barb and I were talking about this yesterday. On top of everything we just pointed out, we're all in law enforcement, and we've just had 2 law enforcement funerals in the
Absolutely.
state. So,
Yeah.
and so everybody we work with is dealing with that.
And Eric Ellsworth certainly has hit our community, and I think there's a sense of grief and loss, and his wife and three beautiful boys there. I sat in my truck at lunchtime watching the funeral service live on KUTV, and I cried for that fallen officer. So yes, plus that can raise some increased awareness or anxiety about the fact that certain of your jobs are very dangerous. Fire folks or law enforcement folks, certain of those jobs certainly pose a level of danger that maybe the rest of us don't experience day in and day out. And when one of your fellow comrades or brothers in arms, if you will, officer dies, I know some officers go, oh, wow, I'm feeling more anxious, I'm feeling a little more worried and concerned, and what if that were to happen to me? So definitely a strong impact there. Thank you. All right,
Maybe
yes.
some mood swings or just being down versus depression.
Great, we'll talk
Maybe
about
some
being
different-
sad,
Yeah.
if you will, and having a difficult moment versus actual depression, or some of the other struggles related to depression that we talked about, like seasonal affective disorder or bipolar mood disorder or something. That's great thought. We'll touch on that too. Yes?
I was interested in the bipolar.
Okay, yes, we'll touch on bipolar. Now, to be clear, bipolar is a more severe form of mood disorder, and I'll touch on it. We'll talk a little bit more about it. And it really does cause some significant mood swings. We call it mood lability. It's like how much of a yo-yo are you on, okay? And how much up and down in your mood does it go? One thing I'm going to address today too is the difference between male depression and female depression. It ought to be a surprise to no one that it manifests itself differently in men and women typically, okay? I don't know what your experience is, but sometimes I just think, what do men and women have in common? Like, really? Okay, so, great thoughts. Anything else? Thank you. I really like that feedback and participation. That's great. Now, how do I make this shift to noon? No, not to the right one. Oh, that's the left one.
On the circle.
On this. Oh,
Push that first when you push again. Push it.
I'm sorry. I'm a low-tech guy in a high-tech world, and my kids make fun of me, and probably should try.
Very good.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it shouldn't just be like that.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Hopefully I'll get it down. Okay, so here's a little narrative. I think it's really important to understand what depression is and what it isn't. And this is a little narrative that you can read just as well as I can. It caught my attention because the first 2 nouns in the first sentence are what? I'm a firefighter and an ex-Marine. Okay? I kind of think, well, that guy's kind of a stud. Maybe not. Maybe he's a big wuss. I don't know. Okay? But he started to notice he couldn't concentrate. He just kind of started going through the motions of life, probably still doing what needed to be done, or maybe taking care of things that needed to be taken care of, but just kind of going through the motions. Never really thought, well, it might be related to something else. I might be struggling in this way for a reason. And the underlying condition, of course, for him turned out to be depression. Okay, back to your point, sadness is, everyone experiences it. I hope everyone in this room has been sad. Not that that's a really pleasant thing to experience or go through, but clearly it's a, if you will, typical or normal human emotion. Okay, so sadness is something that we experience when difficult times hit. So there may have been a level of sadness for many of you or all of you with Eric Ellsworth, even if you didn't know him. I did not know him personally, okay, but I, as many of you did, probably got to know him through some of the media coverage and some of the news stories, and then just seeing his dear wife and 3 boys. If you couldn't have some compassion or feel some sadness perhaps there, I would go, okay, I'm not sure what you're feeling, but certainly that would be sad. All right, when a person's depressed, we have a different level of sadness. This is a persistent level of sadness, doesn't really change. Now the defining criteria is 2 weeks or more consecutive. So we're talking 14 days or more, and you just can't quite come out of it. You just can't quite shake this feeling of despair, this emptiness, this sadness, okay? Now, it can be brought on, if you will, by a triggering event. Okay? Someone close to you retires, big jerk, okay? Someone you love dearly, or your dog passes away, dies, okay? And it's a sad event. But your mood just seems to be stuck in that depressed, and you can't snap out of it. Okay? Well, the reason is because you can't. There is no snapping out of depression. Now, we have this Western mentality. We call it the cowboy mentality. Anybody hear of this? What's the cowboy mentality? Buck up. Yep, buck up. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Come on. Pull yourself together. Snap out of it. And if you're clinically depressed, that simply is not possible. So that's the distinction between sadness and depression. And, you know, it's pretty unfair and, I would say, uncompassionate to say to someone, come on, what's wrong with you? Snap out of it. Come on now. Maybe it's well intended, maybe you're trying to encourage them. But I say if they could, okay, they would. Okay. I don't think anyone really likes feeling depressed. Now, you might argue the point. You might know a couple people in your life that seem to like it. Okay. They're having a pity party, no one's invited. Okay. All right, types and symptoms of depression. So there's all of the psychobabble terms, some of them you may recognize on the left-hand side. Symptoms, hopefully you can read that. It is a little bit smaller print here. Major depressive mood disorder is kind of a broad disorder, okay? That's often referred to as clinical depression. Dysthymia is about like today. Okay, if I had a weather analogy to dysthymia, it would be today. It's gloomy, it's kind of cloudy, it's just not a very happy, ooh, I want to get out of bed and take on the day kind of day. Dysthymia is like this low-grade depression that never improves. You just feel a bit Eeyore-ish all the time. Wasn't much of a house anyway. Depression with psychosis, obviously more severe. It can bring on psychotic symptoms. Now, what are those? Visual or auditory hallucinations. You're hearing things and seeing things that aren't real, okay? And aren't drug-induced. I know you folks get some people to jail that are just coming off of something or on something, and they got some psychosis going on, but that's drug-induced psychosis. Postpartum depression, very real factor. Again, I've never been pregnant, clearly. I don't know what it's like to give birth. Okay, I watched my wonderful, sweet wife do it 4 times. It doesn't look easy. Okay, it's physically taxing. It's, I think, emotionally difficult in certain cases, and it can cause a hormone shift from you know where, okay, to occur. Bipolar mood disorder. Now, childhood bipolar mood disorder does exist, as does childhood depression. About 20 years ago, we actually thought that kids didn't get depressed. We've since learned that we were wrong, and that does happen. Bipolar mood disorder is rare among children. Usually we see it flourish about 19, 20, or 21. That young adult age of vulnerability when both schizophrenia and bipolar mood disorder just seem to blossom. We don't really know why, other than it seems to do with the dopamine neurotransmitter process in the brain, okay? Usually a lack of dopamine, okay? And then seasonal affective disorder, the wintertime blues. Right? So I was going to try to get that Christmas carol that I hate. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I'm not a good singer, but that one where we're all happy, and I think it even says gay in there, which is probably not politically correct. I apologize when we can. I don't mean to offend you. But right, what if you're supposed to be happy this time of year and you're not? Right? Like Christmas just doesn't feel. You might be struggling with seasonal affective disorder again if it's a persistent mood of 2 weeks or more. So there's all the symptoms: feeling guilt, difficulty concentrating, moving or talking. Can anybody identify some of those symptoms? You don't have to raise your hand, but just think to yourself, huh, well, I've felt that. I might be feeling some of those right now. On any given day, let's say you had a really terrible night's sleep last night. You gotta get up and go to work. How are you feeling? Not very energetic. You're typically, probably your concentration is probably less. You're not really focused on what you're doing. It's a bit of a struggle. Now, are you suffering from depression? Not necessarily. Might just be a bad night's sleep. Again, one of the keys there, let's see, where is that one? Loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies and activities you once enjoyed. That's a pretty telltale sign. So if you knew your friend or your family member was really into, whatever, his fantasy football, and you ask him about it, hey, how'd you do in your fantasy league this week? And he's like, I didn't even look at it. Okay, just a simple example of, whoa, what's going on? I mean, a few weeks ago or last year, he couldn't talk enough about it. Maybe that's just because he was winning. But you know, just pay attention to that as a criteria right there. Is you just don't enjoy things you used to enjoy. Any questions or comments so far? Okay. All right, the big three: dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. Those are three neurotransmitters, hormones, brain chemicals, okay, that are known to affect and regulate mood. Now, when it's all working well, in other words, your serotonin levels are nice, your dopamine levels where it needs to be, and your norepinephrine levels nice as well, okay, right in the middle, we have some nice balance in our mood and our cognition. And our mood's pretty stable, our thought process, our cognitive skills are working pretty well. Okay? And each of those are kind of responsible for those three primary activities on the extremes. For serotonin, memory, okay, obsession or compulsion. So we talk about obsessive compulsive disorder. You probably have all heard that term, right? Okay. And you probably joke about how so-and-so's OCD, okay? They probably don't have this disorder, they're just really particular about something, okay? But they would likely be struggling from a serotonin imbalance or deficit, okay? Dopamine, the pleasure and reward, motivation and drive, okay? If you have a healthy amount of dopamine, and if you don't, you might be pleasure-seeking. I think human beings are pleasure-seeking animals for the most part. Okay, whether that's my Coke habit, okay. I rarely go a day without drinking Coca-Cola, self-confession here, okay. And it's all why? Because it tastes good and I like it, okay. It boosts my dopamine. Now, not hugely, right? It's not a big like, whoa, dopamine high, but it's a little bit of a dopamine enhancer in my day. Plus it helps me stay awake, okay. Maybe I'm lacking norepinephrine because I'm not as alert or energetic. I don't know. Okay? But just so you're aware, those are the three big neurotransmitters. So if you're struggling with depression, seasonal affective disorder, or some other form thereof, and you went to see your primary care doctor, and the doctor was trying to find out what's going on, and you're just like, you know, I just don't feel energetic. I just feel tired all the time. I can't concentrate very well. I'm noticing that I'm having a bit of trouble at work with that. ooh, and I'm just irritable as all get out. My husband just says one more, or my wife says, well, I'm gonna probably tear their face off, right? Okay, well, we've got a neurotransmission, neurochemical imbalance in the brain. We talk about it's all in your head. I hate that phrase, and yet when people say it, I want to go, no kidding. It's absolutely in your head, it's in your brain, the most complex organ of your body, right? We have a heart, can't live without it. I wouldn't recommend trying to live without a liver, I don't think that works. Okay, and your brain, can't live without that, although we might know some people who we think don't have one. Okay, but it all happens right there. Let's look at this. Okay, so this is the neurotransmission process in cartoon form, if you will, or drawing form. Okay, so what happens is tiny synaptic gaps in the brain between nerve cells. Okay, the chemicals come down. Okay, they get all wrapped in a little cocoon, and then they are supposed to go across the synaptic gap and plug in to the receptor site. Does that make sense? Now, lots of things can go wrong in this whole process. One, we might not be producing enough. Okay? And you can't just, well, there's this. That's something that we don't have direct control over. I'll talk about some things you can do to boost your serotonin levels or your dopamine levels that can help. Okay? The other problem is our absorption sites, the docking sites for that chemical, there may not be enough. So it's a feedback loop. So if we only have 4 docking sites, okay, and what we really need is 10, okay, so we're operating at 40% on our serotonin, and so it sends a feedback to the producing site saying, whoa, we only have 4 docking stations. Stop producing so much serotonin. We can't absorb it. So the production then slows down. Does that make sense? Now, a medication like Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, okay, there's about 8, Lexapro, they're all called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. What does that mean? Well, they operate exclusively on the serotonin process, neurotransmission process, and what they do is they keep more serotonin circulating in that synaptic gap. So even if we only have 4 absorption sites, those 4 absorb some, and there's still more circulating in the gap, thanks to our Zoloft, then it absorbs a little more. Does that make sense? So those 4 sites are going, oh, we got to pick up the absorption capacity here. We got to get going here, and literally you can develop more absorption or receptor sites in your synaptic gap. And that's prompted by Zoloft or Paxil or Prozac. That's how that works in your brain. This isn't, the neuroscience behind this is better than it's ever been. Which is, I mean, I am so grateful we live in a day and age when that's a possibility. Any questions about that process? It works similarly in the norepinephrine and dopamine receptor sites and neurotransmission process of the brain. The key is to figure out where's your problem. So most of your primary care docs are going to start with a serotonin-based med because it's tried and true. It usually has very little side effects. There's no addictive potential to it. Okay, and
Can you develop more and then keep them and then go off the medicine?
yes. Great question, thank you. Did you hear that? Can you develop more receptor sites, get a better balance, and eventually go off the medication? The answer is yes. Okay. And it might be just needed to get you through a pretty, a really difficult time where your depression was triggered by your mom dying or some other major event, right? Okay. Now, okay, just some facts here. Depression is the most common mental health issue in the country. And there's some statistics about how many work days are lost, how many productivity hours are lost because of it. Okay, it can happen at any age. I hope you look at that the second bullet point. It can happen in children and adolescents, but it often presents with more irritability than a low mood. Anybody been around teenagers anybody got teenagers at home? Anybody raised teenagers? Are they ever irritable?
Are they ever not irritable?
Right.
There, thank you, that's a better question, right? Are they ever not irritable? So I laugh about that because how do you know, right? Is this normal teenage behavior, or is this a concern of a more, of a mood disorder, okay? The way you answer that question is, yes, you look at the irritability and go, man, they're irritable almost all the time, right? And then you go, okay, what's going on in their social life, what's going on with their grades, what else is happening in their life that would be perhaps a cause of concern, or would it, if their grades are good and they still seem to be doing well and they're on the volleyball team and yet they're just irritable, then you go, yeah, normal grouchy teenage behavior, they probably need more sleep. But if you see some other factors, grades are slipping, don't seem to really want any kind of social interaction, they quit the volleyball team, we might be really needing to show more concern that we might see mood disorder developing. Okay? Men experience depression differently than women. Anybody been around a depressed man for any length of time? What's the number one symptom? Any guesses? What was your phrase before about the person retiring? Any guesses? What's the most prominent symptom you notice in a depressed man? Irritability. Anger and irritability. Okay, men typically don't get tearful. They don't crawl in bed and pull the covers over the head and I'm not coming out. Sometimes they do, but not typically. They are usually just ornery as all get out. And irritable and angry. And little things, it would seem, from an outside perspective, some little thing just sets them off. And they, you're just like, whoa. That was, really? Okay? That's a pretty good indicator that a man is struggling with depression. Now, how readily do men go seek help?
All the time.
I
When their
love the
wife makes them.
sarcasm. What, say that
Their
again?
wife makes them.
Absolutely. When their wife makes them, usually is the answer, or their significant other. Okay? So that's a really tricky issue. If you, women, okay, they are just typically better at feelings and emotions. You ladies have a real aptitude for that most men do not. So you might feel guilt, worthlessness, tired, yes, irritability, loss of interest, difficulty sleeping, those are all symptoms of depression. A man may be experiencing all of those things, he's just not as good at identifying. And who's more often going to go seek medical attention or care? Women. How many of you heard this, that Utah leads the nation in antidepressant medication? Couple hands. Yes, it's true. Followed closely by Maine and Oregon, in case anybody wants to know. Okay, now why? Why do you think that is?
Because we don't drink. That's what I always thought it was.
Say that again.
Because we don't drink.
We don't drink alcohol. We don't drink booze as much, although, you know, several people do drink, but, okay. Now tell me why. Why do you, that's a pretty interesting observation. Why do you think that's the case? The rest of the states, if you will. Okay, the other
Because
correlation.
self-medicate, I have family members that do drink, and so I know that that's just
You're right on.
the way they deal with.
You're right on track. So there's a really
They'd rather do
interesting.
that than go to the doctor. They don't like the side effects of,
Though they're
the drugs.
antidepressant,
Yeah.
so they're just gonna medicate it with Pabst Blue Ribbon or whatever, right? I mean, it's a little cheap beer, probably nasty, but I don't know. Great observation, thank you, because there's a direct correlation. Our most highly religious states in the country, okay? Oklahoma, Utah, okay? Any others come to mind? Some of our states in the South that have a really strong Southern Baptist and are, you think, we're conservative? Go to a couple places in Kentucky, Alabama, oh boy, okay? All of those communities have higher rates of depression. Interesting, huh? You'd think, wait a minute, that seems a little counterintuitive, right? Now, I don't know how many of those other people drink, but you're right, okay, why? What does drinking do? It alters your brain chemistry. Do most people find it pleasurable to drink?
At some point.
Yes. At some point is a very good qualifying statement. Yes, I think most people really do enjoy having a drink. Okay? So it's a dopamine enhancer, at least initially. Sadly, it's a central nervous system depressant. So if you just drank 1 or 2 drinks in an evening, there would be probably very little or zero ill effect. Every study ever done looking at it would support that. What's the problem? How many people are disciplined enough to just have 1 or 2 drinks? Very few, and when they start, it's more like 5, 6, 8, or 10. Okay? And then we got a whole host of other problems going along with it. And at that point, it is not mood enhancing, it is less. That's interesting. Any other thoughts? Why is Utah lead the country in antidepressant prescription rates?
We have the most kids.
We have the most kids. You're right, we do have a high birth rate. I haven't looked at that carefully, but I love the observation, because the demands and stress and worry with children can certainly, I call them life suckers
I
sometimes.
think we generally have higher expectations of ourselves in Utah, and studies are now showing that high altitude can be a leading factor in depression.
Great comment. Ever hear that? So we have a bit of a perfectionistic, if you will, standard across the board here in Utah in some ways. That's not all bad. Obviously, we want to strive to improve and do better, but none of us are perfect, and hopefully we don't have that expectation. That second piece, say that again.
High altitude is being shown to show depression.
Very good. We live in what's called the suicide belt. You may have heard this. Okay, all of them are high elevation states, from Montana all the way down, okay, to Arizona. Okay, it's called the suicide belt of America. Okay, we have more or higher rates of suicide per capita than any other part of the country. And a researcher at the University of Utah is honing in on elevation or altitude as a key factor. You know, so I don't know if you can use it as an excuse if your job performance isn't going to say, hey, it's the altitude. You know, it's, it affects people when they go play at the Broncos Stadium in you know, Denver, right? Why wouldn't it affect me? I don't know if that would fly, but you can try it. Okay, risk factors. We know with depression, major depressive mood disorder, bipolar mood disorder, they all have a genetic component, a genetic vulnerability. Typically, some member of your family has either struggled with it or has it, and it just is a genetic predisposed factor. And then you add in a job loss or other major life changes and stresses, okay? A divorce, you know, go down the list, a death in the family, and we could start it off, okay? By no surprise, certain chronic diseases that people suffer from also increase risk factor for depression. Okay, if you're not feeling well, you're dealing with chronic pain, you know, you're limited with what you can do, okay, because of a chronic condition, you're typically not very happy. Okay. Any questions or comments so far? We're doing on time. Let you guys maybe eat your sandwiches or something while I was here yammering on. Okay? All right, treatment. No one-size treatment fits all. Needs to be some flexibility, variability in the treatment. The 2 treatments that have shown the most promise are there in blue: antidepressant medication, okay, and psychotherapy. By the way, the other reason people take more antidepressants in Utah is because they treat other conditions. Okay, you may take an antidepressant like Lexapro to treat anxiety. That's very common. So it's a little misleading in that regard too. By the way, the other good thing about Utah is we are a higher educated populace than most other states, and when we're more educated and informed, we're more likely to seek help. And that's a positive thing. Not bad. Okay. We want depressed people getting treatment, which is a really good thing. Okay, so now talk therapy. That's what I do. Okay, I sit and listen to people tell me all their troubles all day long. I go home depressed as hell. Just kidding. Sometimes I do. yeah, my job hasn't, I'm not gonna get a bad back doing my job or blow out my disc necessarily, but I might have an emotional cost or toll to my job. Okay, there's things I need to do to really take care of myself that way. Okay, but talk therapy really does work. They've even put people's brains under functional MRIs as they're going through talk therapy, and we literally can change some of the structure of the brain and the way one part of the brain talks or communicates to the other part of the brain. How do we do that? It's by focusing on a person's thoughts. Okay? Simple example. A person who's depressed, they may very well think and feel, my life is horrible. My life sucks. Okay? Now, that might be true. Right? It's possible, isn't it? Someone's life truly could suck. Okay? Chances are, though, that's what we would call an all or nothing statement. Every aspect of that person's life sucks. Jenny, how much time do we have? Just about one? So we're going to examine that thought, and we'll get to a little part here where we can break that down. Okay, and really start to come hopefully to a better or more balanced thought. Okay? All right. Some other interventions. That top one, I cannot emphasize enough. I'm sure most of you are just sick of hearing about it. Okay? Exercise and being active. Just had a person come in and visit with me. They're struggling with depression. One of the things they're doing is taking their dog for a walk. Okay? Does it help? Does it resolve the depression? No, but it helps. It helps significantly. Okay? All right? Set realistic goals for yourself. Back to that perfectionistic tendency that maybe some people have. Okay, a realistic goal for this holiday season, I don't know, you know. It can be pretty stressful. I don't know if anyone else feels or experiences that, but holiday season can be stressful. Expect your mood to improve gradually, not immediately. That's really important. Okay? We're kind of an instant gratification, want it now society in some respects. Okay? Or if we're dissatisfied, we're going to take the item back to Target to include our spouse and to get an exchange. Okay? No, it's try to stay in the struggle. It's going to be a gradual. Okay. If you're struggling with depression or seasonal affective disorder, try to postpone making big decisions like retirement. Okay. Sorry, Sanders. I'm sure you've been thinking about it for a good long time. I wish you well. Okay. Or making a job change. Okay, the reason being is because you're not in your best frame of mind to be making those decisions if you're struggling with depression. Okay, and then certainly educate yourself about depression. Now, there's all kinds of things you can read online, right? And I'll identify some websites that I trust and are very, very solid information. Okay, like what I see online the other day. It was some very conservative Christian group. Talking about the conspiracy theory of SSRIs, Prozac, how it's brainwashing the entire country, all the people who are on it, makes us more vulnerable, I don't know what, being taken over by the Russians, I don't know. But, okay, I'm just like, wow. It scares me when that kind of disinformation is out there and someone might read and believe it. Any questions on anything we've touched on so far? Okay. Now, see the low-tech guy in the high-tech world, so I tried to scan this and put it into the presentation here, but, okay, so I don't think any of you can see it really. Okay, but key here are some questions to ask. I'd be happy to email this to you and people can pick through my presentation as they want, okay? So if we go down, 3 bullets, it says, if my best friend or someone who loves me knew I was thinking this thought, what would they say to me? That can be really helpful because maybe you've had a good friend come to you and express concern or thoughts, okay? And if they're saying, gosh, I'm just really struggling, I feel really sad and empty inside, and God, I can't concentrate at work, I got my supervisor breathing down my neck, on my back about my work performance, okay? And if this was a good, dear friend, or someone you cared about, what would you say to him? You know what? I think you're lazy and lack self-discipline.
Cowboy.
Right. What are you, a wimp? Okay, right? It's all in your head. You know, no, I hope none of us would be that uncaring or cold and say those types of things. Okay, what would we say to them? Any thoughts? Hopefully we wouldn't do a lot of talking for one, we'd listen. You know, I hope you've all had the experience of truly being listened to. Someone just is there to listen to you talk and express what you feel. If you've had that experience, it's very validating. It helps. That's why they say, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a professional listener. It's really, really important in my job to sit and listen. I haven't lived a minute of my clients' lives. I don't know what it's like to be them. And the moment I start making assumptions about what it's like to be them, I'm committing some errors. That's not a good place to be as a therapist. Listen and tell me. Okay, so you said this. Tell me more about that. What's that like for you? Okay? Hopefully, you'll just listen. Okay? 5 years from now, I'm going to tell you about a client I work with, and then when I tell you his age, you're going to be like, at least I was. So he's in a job and he hates his boss and wants to bury him in a hole. That's what he said. I hate my boss and I want to bury him in a hole. What's scary is he works in excavation. Seriously, this young person digs big holes for a living with huge track holes and other things. Okay? And we can laugh because maybe we've always, any one of us may have hated our boss from time to time and thought it might be nice to bury him in a hole. Okay, now, hopefully we don't act on that. Okay? That was my first concern. Oh my gosh, is he serious? Is he going to hit this guy in the head with a shovel, bury him in a hole? Okay, I was a little worried about that, right? Okay. Then he said, so he told me why he was so angry. I went, okay, I can definitely understand why you'd be angry and upset about that. You know, validating that that's a somewhat normal reaction to get angry and upset with your boss from time to time, especially given a certain situation. Then, he said, I was sitting there running the bulldozer, and the thought came to me, when I'm 80 years old and I look back on this, is it going to matter a hill of beans? Now, he put it in more colorful language, but I got to cut back on my swearing. Okay. Is it going to matter a hill of beans? I thought, wow, this kid's 20 years old. 20 years old, and he was able to have that insight and awareness or that wisdom to see. And I'm an 80-year-old man, and I look back on my stupid boss when I had when I'm 20. What is it really going to matter all that much? And what did that do for him? That shifted his emotion so it was far more manageable. Okay? Because then he started thinking, this is just the beginning point in my career. And then he started setting goals about what he wanted to do different with his job and what kind of company he really wanted to work for and not put up with his current boss. Okay?
Well, eventually that boss will retire.
Wow. Sandy, are you really glad you came to the presentation today?
You can just come to my office tomorrow.
We love you, Sandy.
Okay. So those are a set of questions that, are there small things that might contradict my thought? Okay, so let's go through the ABCs of your brain, if you will. Okay, throughout your day, different events, that's the A, okay, the action or the event, are going to happen. How much control do you have over many of those?
Usually none.
No, none, right? So if you work in the county tax part and someone's coming in and they're really unhappy about their homeowner's tax, property tax, whatever they're unhappy about, and they're giving you the business, okay? I can't imagine that feels good, okay?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. And it's not even, has very little to do with probably your position anyway, right? Okay? So, Or you're dealing with inmates at the jail. Okay, I used to be the jail mental health consultant. I have a little bit of a taste of what that's like. Okay, but not on a day-to-day basis. Okay, now we don't have control over many of these events. Okay, but we're going to have a reaction to them, are we not? So let's take a really disgruntled county resident who is unhappy about their taxes. Okay, that's an event. Do we have any control over it? Very little, if none. So then our reaction is typically going to be what? Oh, that was so pleasant. I'm so glad you came in to talk to me. Yeah, no, right? Okay, I'm sure you have to be polite and professional, or try really hard to be polite and professional. But what's the reaction? What's the emotional response inside?
Frustration.
Frustration? Good one. Anything else come to mind? Anger?
Real defensive.
Perhaps feeling like defensive, like you're defending your position because you're feeling attacked, right?
I think
That's
it
really.
would've been, well, you,
Oh.
you know.
Finger pointing, you.
Right.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna get defensive and want to give them the business back.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we just can't do that, right? You simply cannot be unprofessional and give the business back, okay, as much as we'd like to, okay? So then what? You go through your day and you've had 3 or 4 of these experiences. You come home and what? And how are you feeling?
Yes.
Tense. And hopefully you register or notice in your body where you feel that tension, okay? I got a spot right here, right there. That thing will just knot up. Oh my gosh, man. Okay, and I'm like, ooh, let's see what's going on. That's a real signal, like I gotta do my yoga more. Well, if you don't do yoga, please start. It is fantastic, okay? And it just relieves a lot of stress and tension. Wonderful. So, all right, so we come home, we've had a tense day, right? So what's our behavior gonna be?
Drink.
I'm gonna hit the bottle, maybe, true. I might hit the bottle to cope with my difficult day. Okay, what else?
Take it out on everybody.
Thank you, I'm gonna take it out on my family members, right? I'm gonna let that teenage son of mine know what I think I am. I'm tired of biting my tongue, right? Okay? Right? Okay, that's another one. Now, how are we doing at home? A big, happy, lovely day in the life, right? Okay? So this is key. If we recognize, okay, I've had a stressful day. Wow, it was a rough day. First is that recognition. Man. Okay, now what do I need to do? Okay, I need to do some self-care. I hope all of you have your list of self-care things that you do. Okay, and hopefully it's not drinking 3 shots of bourbon. Okay, I'm against bourbon.
1 or 2.
1 or 2 would be okay. You're right, Trent.
With the family.
Over an evening with the family, not shut away in your. You got some personal confession? No, I'm just kidding.
I was just supporting Cobra.
Okay, support your coworker. Okay, yes.
I'm the one that goes and makes inappropriate comments in my boss's office.
Okay.
Tells some bad jokes, laugh it out.
I see. Okay, using humor. Okay, humor is a wonderful self-care thing. Exercise, okay, and like yoga for me is a wonderful release in self-care. Okay, talking about it. Okay, the risk of being married to a therapist is he's all talked out and listened out when he gets home. Okay, I'm like the plumber that has a leaky toilet. Okay, and so I don't feel like talking. And sometimes I really don't feel like anyone talking to me, right? I use the self-checkout a lot at stores, right? I don't talk to anybody. Just don't talk to me. Okay. All right, so we're going to have some self-care. Okay, I don't know what's on your list of self-care. Hopefully you have some things that help release tension, help you to relax. Just the recognition on the way home. Oh man, I've had a rough day. Some deep breaths, calming breaths, and go, okay, all right, I'm going home to those kids, okay? And what do kids want?
Attention.
Attention, food, okay, right? They need a lot of stuff, okay? And if you've had a rough day at work or you're really in a great frame of mind, meet those needs. No, so maybe it's a Kentucky Fried Chicken night tonight. Gotta be aware of the budget, but maybe that's an adjustment to make, okay? All right, recommended reading. If you got a device, you can note these in, okay? These are 3 really, really good books on the topic. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Dr. Daniel Amen. And if you want to go on, again, he's got a ton of different nutritional supplements and other more natural homeopathic ways to treat mood and depression, okay? He's got some patented brain scanning technology that is absolutely incredible in identifying everything from traumatic brain injury issues. He's worked a lot with the NFL on that, to 7 subtypes of ADD and ADHD. Did you know there were 7 subtypes of ADD and ADHD? Right. I think that's thanks to Daniel Amen and his brain scanning technology. Okay, the Feeling Good Handbook. It's an old but tried and true book. It's all about the way we think and the way our perspective on life and our world. And that's really, really important. That's one thing we can change. We can work to change the way we think or our perspective on life. And then Mind Over Mood, same concept, falls in line with what we call cognitive behavior therapy. Our cognitions are our thoughts, and the way we think about our life obviously can affect our mood. So, those are 3 very good books. And then here's some additional online resources that I know and trust. Okay, the National Institute of Mental Health has some really good pamphlets and publications on depression, like that one right there that's entitled Depression, What You Need to Know. It's like a 12, less than that, 8 to 12 page little booklet, okay? I think they give them to you for free, or they're at a really significant discounted rate. Might be some good research or literature to have around. Obviously, in our county, we have a really, really big problem and concern with suicide. Oxford County, per capita, typically leads the state in suicide death. Okay, it's a really big concern. And anytime someone's depressed, they might start thinking, I'm worthless, I have no value in life, I might as well just kill myself. Okay? And please, if you have a friend who seems to be struggling with that, do not be afraid to ask direct questions. Are you thinking about suicide? Do you want to die? Do you have a plan to end your life or kill yourself? Ask those direct questions. Care enough about them, okay, to ask those questions. And then, of course, seek help. Emergency room, psychiatric hospitals, which for adults would be Logan and or Katy here in our area. And then NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, wonderful, wonderful program in our country. And one of the great things they have is called Family to Family program, where if you are struggling with a family member who has a mental health issue, bipolar, depression, whatever it may be, it's hard. It can be really hard to be married to a person who's depressed or who has bipolar mood disorder. And NAMI does a great job of supporting those family members in how to navigate that and what to do in their family-to-family program. All right, I think we're probably up to the end of the presentation. Any concerns, questions, things? Yeah, that I can try to answer? Yes, please.
So I know someone who exhibits a lot of the symptoms that were on there as far as like the low energy, irritability, kind of feeling like meh a lot.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, they've had it for longer than 2 weeks, they must be depressed. It's like, it's been ongoing, like months and months. But kind of like, they're in a good mood sometimes and then they'll dip down. And so I'm not really sure like how to kind of deal with them with that, or like know that there's a problem. So like at what point is it like they don't have it constantly, you know, but you're kind of wondering if maybe they should go talk to someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
So I think the way I would approach that is kind of try to assess what the impact might be in other aspects of their life. So their work life, their relationships, their social life, okay, their hobbies and interests, right? And when they're feeling in that more down mood as you describe, or, and it might not be, we have mild, moderate, and severe depression. It could be just a mild level of depression that we experience. And, again, medication probably isn't the route to go with a mild level of depression. I would really encourage them to go see a therapist and talk it through, okay? And get some coping skills so that when their mood starts to go down, they can start to recognize it, and then they can identify some things they can do, okay, to help counteract that. So that would be, because usually if you go, man, I am tired of you being depressed, you need to go get help, okay, right? The people don't typically respond well to that.
Yeah.
Right, so just kind of start talking like, wow, you seem to be a bit more down lately. How are things going at work? Or what's going on between you and maybe your spouse? Type of idea. We go, I know if you go see a therapist and talk through these things and look at developing some coping mechanisms, you can really help. Just kind of plant that idea. Then next time it happens, you're going to encourage that idea a little more. Thank you for the question. Any other questions, things you want to touch on before we wish you a really great day and a happy holiday season?
Are
Yes.
anxiety and depression generally related?
Say that again?
Are anxiety and depression
Oh,
generally
absolutely.
related?
Here's the way it usually works, okay? We've got good studies on kids about this. Kids usually, anxious kids become depressed as adults. This is pretty much how that goes, okay? Now, yes, they're absolutely related. So if you've ever suffered from what we would call a clinical level of anxiety, so generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, okay? Those things I think are very, very unpleasant. I don't get anxious much except when I'm giving presentations, and outside of that, not much. So, but people who do, okay, and then sometimes it impairs their ability to function, right? They're not sleeping well because they're worried all the time. They feel on edge. They're irritable. They may perceive and think, that the LDS Ward Christmas party is really threatening and unpleasant. They might be right about that, but okay. Okay, and then they start withdrawing, and they start, and that's where depression can really start to. So generally, when I see a depressed person coming in to talk to me, I always think in my head, there may be an anxiety issue. Let's be really careful here to assess, do they suffer from anxiety as the primary concern, and the depression is simply a manifestation that they're seeking help for, okay? So yeah, absolutely, they are often very strongly correlated. Other questions? Did I touch, go ahead, sorry. Yeah, please.
You had mentioned you're going to touch on some ways to boost like the serotonin.
Yes, okay, so exercise, okay, certain fruits and vegetables, okay, are serotonin powerhouses, okay, dark green leafy stuff, certain legumes and nuts, okay, are good serotonin powerhouses. So nutritionally, you can do a lot to enhance your serotonin. For example, okay, if you loved grapefruit and you could stomach eating 3 or 4 grapefruit a day, you would need to tell your doctor before he prescribed you Prozac or Zoloft. Why? Because you would have a serotonin drug interaction, because that dose through the grapefruit would be almost as much as a serotonin prescription. As a Prozac prescription. Okay, low dose of Prozac. Okay. So, and then exercise. Okay. Exercise is huge on dopamine and serotonin enhancing. Sex is a wonderful form of exercise, so if you're not having enough of that, you may approach your spouse and say, I need to boost my serotonin and dopamine levels here. Can we have some fun in the bedroom today? I'm not sure that would work for you, but you might try it. Okay, what the heck, right? Okay. So nutritionally, look at, broccoli is another good, nice serotonin booster. Okay, our dark green leafy stuff like that is really good. Certain nuts and legumes are good, and then exercise is another really powerful serotonin booster. I don't think I addressed bipolar quite enough, perhaps. I don't know. Is there anything specific to that?
Well, mostly just curious questions about, Is there a difference between bipolar and manic depressive? Are those the same thing, just different terms?
Thank you. Those are the same thing, different terms. There's two types of bipolar mood disorder, like two types of diabetes, if you will, type 1 and type 2, okay? Type 1 is the classic mood swing from a really high manic mood. You got grandiose thinking, rapid speech, diarrhea of the mouth. Okay, I'm going to remodel the bathroom in 3 days. I saw it on the Home Network, whatever, right? Okay, and then they get halfway through and it stays in pieces for 6, 7, 8 months. Okay, so that's a manic mood, that elevated mood, and then it follows by a depressive crash. So you go from way up here in what we call manic heightened hyper mood to a very strong depression typically. That's bipolar 1. Bipolar 2 is these folks are mostly depressed, and occasionally they'll have what we call a hypomanic mood, which is basically I actually feel somewhat normal. Does that make sense? My mood is different. I'm not depressed. I'm not manic. I'm not about to go out to Best Buy and buy $5,000 worth of electronic equipment. That's what this teenage son did with his mom, who suffered from bipolar mood disorder. He said, "Mom's in a manic. Let's go to Best Buy." Seriously. Happened over in Logan. Okay? And he took Mom to Best Buy in a manic mood, and she got the in-store credit card, right? I think it was a $5,000 limit, and he got $4,900 and something worth of merchandise. That little stinker. Okay? 17-year-old kid. Okay? Man, he had a really great setup, home theater, Xbox, whatever system, right? So, the bipolar 2 is your hypomanic, meaning you only go up about halfway up. It's an elevated or improved mood, but you're probably within the normal mood range that people who don't suffer from that have on. Now, it's really important to know which is happening. Plus, we have rapid cycling bipolar. It's all over the place, okay? Most of the time people come and seek treatment in bipolar mood phases when they're depressed. Makes sense, right? Feeling like crap, you're depressed. No one goes in to see the doctor when they're in a manic mood. There we are, on top of the world, okay, feeling great. Okay, and bipolar is a more severe form of a mood disorder. In my opinion, it cannot be successfully managed without medication. Absolutely need medication and the appropriate medication to manage bipolar. So if you think someone's suffering from bipolar and they are not seeking out medication, please encourage them to do so. I think you really probably want to work with a skilled psychiatrist, okay, not just your primary care doctor on that issue, because it's a little more severe, and hopefully a psychiatrist that you can relate to and talk with, and he's willing to try different types of mood stabilizing medications to help. Some of our tried and true medications for bipolar, lithium, it's been around for 40 years, and it is probably the gold standard, really. Okay, we have other fancier medications that cost, some of these meds cost $400 a month, which I think is criminal, probably, but maybe that's not fair for me to judge them as criminal, but okay, so, yes?
How do you handle the person that says there's nothing wrong with me, it's everybody else that's changed?
Great question, okay. I would have a panel discussion, if you will. So in other words, it's everyone else that's changed. Really? Like in your brain you're thinking, well, how unlikely is that, or how likely is that, right? So everybody else in your world has changed, not you. So all 20 other people have changed, and you're still the same person. Right. Okay? So what I would do there is strategically try to identify people in that person's world that they might listen to more. Dealt with that issue with a man that I've worked with, and the only reason I'm working with him is because his 27-year-old son, whom he has a very close relationship with, they're hunting buddies, okay? His 27-year-old said, "Dad, you are and if you don't get help, me and my wife and my kids won't be coming over anymore because you're impossible to deal with. And the way you treat my mother, I've had it." Okay, it was that blunt and direct. Had to be with this guy. Had to smack him up the side of the head with a proverbial baseball bat. And then he came in and said, I said, "Why are you here?" He goes, "Because I love my son and he thinks I'm a said, all right, let's get to work. It sounds really important. I can tell you love your son, otherwise you wouldn't be in a therapist's office. Okay, and we've really made some nice progress, and he's, okay, so that's what I do, is try to identify key people in that person's world they might listen to, okay? Because they'll be dismissive of certain people, but they'll listen more to others, typically, okay? Sometimes it comes down to an ultimatum. We can't live with you like this. I love you, I want a relationship to be successful, but I cannot live with you like this. How can we get you some help? So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Any other questions or thoughts? Well, it's been great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll thank Janet on my way out, but I sure value my treatment relationship with the county. I see a lot of folks come through my door, and I love giving the support and treatment to folks from the county. If you don't get real great pay, but you do have a little nice EAP benefit package that comes along and offers some free counseling sessions. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that. Anyway, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I hope you really have a good time of year. Thanks for coming and listening to my presentation.
If you guys didn't sign the sign-up sheet, make sure to sign that.